Thank you for joining us today. I'm Sachi Yanari-Rizzo, Curator of Princeton Drawings, and with me is Lauren Wolfer, Associate Curator of Special Collections and Archives. And we're here to talk about an exhibition in the Print and Drawing Study Center that Lauren brought to Fort Wayne. It's an exhibition of cyanotypes entitled Baby, I Got the Blues, Photographs by Azya Lashelle that is on view through March 25th. And a little bit of background information. Azya was born and raised in Ypsilanti, Michigan. In 2019, she received her B.F.A in painting from Michigan State University. She is currently working towards her M.F.A in photography at Georgia State University. Her work explores the impact of racism on her own life and the greater Black community in America. Through an interdisciplinary practice, Azya Lashelle navigates the transgenerational trauma of slavery on the contemporary psyche. And we are fortunate to have Azya joining us today. So welcome, Azya.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to have my work be a part of the show, and to just be here and talk to you guys and about the work.
And yeah, we were really eager to hear more about your artwork, but I have a few questions first. I think
Mhm.
people are always curious about why an artist chooses this path, what drew you to art, who or what kind of influences you had or mentors.
hmm Okay, so I have always wanted to be an artist. There's like paintings from when I was 3, and when I was like younger, I was like, I'm just going to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist. And even when I got to undergrad, I switched my major once, which was from art education to just being an artist. And so I've kind of just always knew. I'm not a confrontational person, and I think that with art, it makes it easier for me to confront some issues or confront things that I find difficult to talk about or to talk through. And so, because of that, I've gotten way more into just self expression through the arts.
Um, yeah, and you talked about the schools you attended. Um, Going to school, you were a painting major as an undergrad, but now you're focusing on photography in grad school. Why the change, or maybe there really isn't that much of a change?
Yeah, so I painted a lot and I took one intro photo class at Michigan State, and it was taught by Laura Shipley. And I would say she's one of the big influences that I've had throughout my art career. And I just enjoyed it so much. So my second concentration is in photography, but my first one, meaning I took more painting classes than I took photo classes. Yeah, it is painting, oil painting. And so I have been fortunate enough to be able to use photography to express in a quicker way what I wanted to say, if that makes any sense. Like I felt like paintings was taking a little bit longer, and I'm not like a sketch person. I don't typically sketch when I make paintings even. I kind of just go for it. And one thing that's big about painting is repetition, and just kind of going through the process over and over again and painting something a couple of times to get it to be, to where you want it to be at. I like to paint one painting and then I'm done. It's time to move on. And so photography, though, allowed me to have repetition within my art and to take multiple pictures in one setting and then be able to improve. And that was one thing that I wasn't getting in painting, where I didn't see like myself improving because I wasn't spending enough time with it. And so photography, though, I could see myself improving because I would go to a shoot and I would take 700 photos. I would, spend a lot more time with my models. I would do, just put in a lot more work than I wasn't putting in with painting. And so that was kind of the switch, or as to why I switched basically. But I miss painting. I do miss it. I have not painted in a while. And I've been thinking about it quite some time. Like, I should just buy some paints and just like go back at it and paint some
Or
more, I guess.
maybe combine the two and paint over your photos.
Yes, yes. That would be something that yeah, I'd be so into. Yeah. Cuz I need something. I need that outlet again. Yeah.
Oh, and since Lauren, Lauren and Asia, you connected through Photolucida's critical mass. And this is an opportunity that maybe viewers aren't familiar with. Can the two of you talk about this opportunity, and was this the first time that you participated?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
start by the Photolucida critical mass is a call for entry exhibit, sort of similar to what we do at the National here at the museum. Is they put a call for entry out and photographers enter, and then it gets juried. I was asked to be a juror a few years ago. It was actually Natalie Christensen, who was one of my invited national artists, was the one that submitted me as a juror, and I accepted, and I've been doing it for a few years now. I missed out last year because of technical problems, but that was my own fault. But I saw Asia's work this past year, and I just thought they were really cool. I love cyanotypes, and the messaging behind it, the images, everything was all tied together so beautifully that I thought it would be a great exhibit here for the Fort Wayne Museum of Art.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So that was my first critical mass. I had heard of it. I heard of it through a curator from another show that I did here in Atlanta. And I was just told to just apply. And so I didn't really know like much about it or what I was getting into or like what it was like. And so it just so happened that, you know, it worked out, you know, to like be a part of such a big show, you know, and have so many different jurors see my work was very, I don't know, it was a cool experience, you know, and I definitely would like apply again this year, I think.
It sounds like a great experience.
Yeah.
And hopefully, Lauren, how many people participate, do you think?
Oh, I don't know, because there's a first round that there's other jurors that weed out from like I think thousands to the like few hundred that I see, and then from what I jury, there's a top 50 that's announced, and it's just on a score range. So if we think work is really great, it gets like 7 points, I think, and then it goes from 7 to 5, 3, and 0. So I think they take a score of what all the jurors give, and the top people are those top 50. So I only see the second round. I don't go through the first round and see. I don't know how many entries total, but it must be a really large amount if I'm seeing like 300 to 400.
It's fabulous that they have that out there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see all kinds of photographs. I was thinking, Asia, because you're working in cyanotype, and when I think of photography today, I think of all the technological changes that are going on with digital cameras and then photo editing programs and such. And then here you pick cyanotype, which was invented in 1842. So you're picking one of the earliest photo processes, you know, with along the side of salt prints and daguerreotypes. So why did you pick cyanotypes, and do you work exclusively in it?
Yes. So I kind of work exclusively in it. I've been branching out a little bit, but I'm trying to think. This question has so many layers for me. So John Herschel, who created the cyanotype, you know, it was a white cis man, and I think like it's important for us artists living today, who are people of color, queer, or whatever it is, you know, to kind of reclaim some of these techniques that used to be dominated by certain identities, right? And so for me, using the cyanotype is kind of just reclaiming the cyanotype and having it, you know, putting Blackness into it and having Black people show up within the cyanotype aspect. And so that's pretty much why I do it, but also because I love the color blue as a representation of sadness, of Blackness, of just so many different layers of like what the color blue can mean. And I think that the cyan and the cyanotype is just like, when I imagine that, it's just kind of like what I see in that imagination. And so for me, it's a lot of just kind of going off of like a gut feeling of like, this just feels right. This just feels like the blue that needs to be used. This just feels like the process. And I think that process too goes a little bit back to the idea of like painting for me. and being a little bit more hands-on with the art. So when I'm coating the cyanotype mixture onto the glass, or I'm painting it onto the paper, it's kind of giving me back that feeling as if it was like a painting, or, you know, something more tactile than just pressing like the button on the camera, you know? And so that would be like some of the reasons why. And then as far as now, I've been working with cyanotyping my medicine papers. I have like depression and anxiety, and so I take medications for it. And so I've been like printing cyanotypes on top of the papers that the doctors give me that talk about, you know, the medication that you are supposed to be taking. I've never read, and still may never read what it says, you know. But I think it's interesting getting like these pamphlets that are like, okay, this is kind of everything that you're putting into like your system, and then cyanotyping on top of that. A little bit about myself, you know, and kind of expressing myself through that way. And so, yeah, that would be a little bit of like what I'm doing now too.
Do we want to, since you're talking more about your artwork, should we look at some of your work so you can
Yeah.
take us through?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is actually the second cyanotype I ever created. It's untitled right now. I've been going back and forth with like what kind of like title I would give if I had to give a title. The images of my brother, who I had model for me. He's 20. I'm 20, about to turn 25. So we're about 5 years apart. And so he lives in Detroit right now. He's going to school there. And yeah, he is, I have I don't even know what I would say, a strong connection to the Black experience and like the Black male experience through my little brother, and just thinking about, okay, like I want him to be safe. I want him to be able to go out into the world and be presented as this little kid that I know him as, right? And because he's like 6 foot tall and all these different identity aspects, and being Black, you know, he has a lot against him. And so I'm constantly thinking about this throughout my work. And that's where a lot of like, where I take a lot of pictures of Black men, I would say. And so, yeah, so this is just my second cyanotype, picture of my brother. You have that yellow background because I didn't rinse it out all the way. And just to speak a little bit more about the process, I mix in a Knox gelatin into the cyanotype A and B solution. I use like a crock pot, and it like melts, and then I'm like stirring it every once in a while and making sure it doesn't overheat, and cooking it on warm. It's like a whole process. It takes about 2 days to make one, I would say. And so after the cyanotype mixture is made, you put it in like a refrigerator or somewhere cold, and it turns into like a jello, as gelatin would do. And so after that, I melt the gelatin and turn it back into a liquid substance, and then I pour it on top of the glass. And so within this one, what you're seeing is a little bit of the flakes and pieces of the gelatin that was too thick. And then the yellow comes from just not rinsing it out like as much as I should have. But for like a second one, I really like this one. And I included it in this just because in the presentation, because it shows really the process, although it's not in the show. I am very proud of this piece, being that it is like the second one I ever did. And for some reason, whenever I do cyanotypes on paper, they don't always come out. But on glass, I usually have a lot more, a better luck, I would say.
So before we skip, is there a reason for the yellow? Is that a thought out part that you wanted with it, or was it more of just like learning the process?
More of learning the process. I would say that was like heavy error. Like it works. I think it works, but it was a lot of error on my part, and not realizing, I think I was too scared to touch it. You know, even once I saw the yellow, it was just like, oh my gosh, I did it. I created this. Okay, let's just leave it alone, move on to like the next one. And from there, they got better.
And then with the flaking, you said it was because of the Jello buildup.
Yes.
Did you take that as like a lesson that you could apply to others? Was it something you liked or disliked?
I love the gelatin buildup for sure. And it was something that I realized I have to leave up to chance. Because I tried to teach someone else how to make a glass cyanotype. And when teaching them, they wanted to get the flakes too. And I was like, okay, just pour a lot on. We're just not going to like dump it a little bit. And when we went to put it in the water, it all like washed away, like because it was just so much flaking and so much peeling, that the water kind of just went underneath the gelatin, between the gelatin and the glass, and like caused the image to just blow up. And it was just like a complete like fail. And so it made me realize like, all right, like too much flakes is a bad thing. And so like we have to find like the balance between a little bit of flakes, and just again leaving it up to chance and not trying to control it as much, and that kind of just helps the process.
We go to the next image.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this image was the one on the left was created by Consuela Kananga. I believe that's how you say her name. And it's a profile of a young girl from the Tennessee series. And so I recreated this image, entitled it Young Girl in Georgia. And it's one of my friends that I've met while living here in Atlanta. And again, she is wearing white, like a lot of my figures or models wear. White is extremely important to me, and making them black in white images versus black and white. And so having them wear white and kind of just reclaiming this idea that white means pure and black means evil. What it means if you put like a black person in something white and allow them to be pure, or be seen as pure, or be seen differently than what society has said they should be seen as. Yeah. And so this one's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of Sachi and I's favorites because it seems so reminiscent of that old imagery. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I told people coming in to visit that I swear it reminded me of something from like the 50s or so during the civil rights movement. And it just has this really nice historical quality to it.
Thank you.
And with this one, we see the wood base. Was there a reason for that wood base, or did you just want something to hold them up with?
Okay, so this is that's purple heartwood, which I wanted something like to kind of be in the same category as like the cool colors, so like the blues, the purples, and so I how to display the cyanotypes has been like one of my biggest challenges actually. And right now, like something that I am working on for the future is creating like a better way to display them, or like just a way that like maybe might be hands, might be floating, might be, I've done cyanotypes on a window before. And so I'm just constantly playing around with this idea of like, okay, how can these be displayed? And so one solution I've come up with is like purple heartwood, mostly because it's one of the heaviest woods. And so a chunk of it can help like hold the glass, and I don't have to worry about the glass like tipping over as much. And so it's pretty sturdy. And so that would be like my main reason as to why purple heartwood. Yeah. And I think it complements the blue very nicely as well. And it goes back. I mean, can you go to the next slide? Let's see. I think this one will be okay. This one isn't the one I was expecting, but I still could talk about. No, you didn't.
Okay.
I was thinking. Okay, so a lot of my images are taken as well in nature, and so the thing about the nature aspect and ties back into the purple heartwood is this idea of reclaiming nature. And so I'm all about like reclaiming spaces, reclaiming processes, reclaiming colors, right? And so in this, the purple heartwood helps, or not purple heartwood, I'm sorry, the nature helps to reclaim that space of something that used to be a place of violence for Black people. where during slavery and where lynchings were happening and just so much was going on, that was such a violent space. And when you think about not when you think about it as much, but one of the stereotypes is that Black people don't go out in nature, right? And that Black people they don't go outside. And I grew up where there is a moment where this kid was like, I don't want to go out inside in the sun because I don't want to get darker, right? And so it became this fear moment of being outside because you don't want to go outside and get darker, and then all of that comes with so much weight things that feel like weight as a child, right? Things that you haven't been able to recognize is like, no, it's okay if you like go outside in the sun, right? And so that is another layer to this work. This one specifically, Lifting the Veil of Ignorance, after Booker T. Washington, is one of my friends who is queer, and they use they them pronouns. And this, I work with a lot of people who are queer as a queer person myself. And so it's kind of like lifting this veil of the ignorance that people have, right? And so in this idea that Booker T. Washington came up with, education and other devices can help other people learn more about different people and make them become, I don't know, not more accepting, but like just seen as people, right? And so that's why this one's one of my favorites as well. And it has that same like flaking. And I had to be careful again with how much I let it flake.
And this one's even got some like really bare like open spots. Is there a reason for that, or another like testing of the materials?
Another just leaving it up to chance. Yeah, I would say chance, but also when I'm pouring it onto the glass, I can see where it hasn't touched, right? And so it's like a choice to be like, well, I'm not going to fill in that hole. I'm just going to leave it blank. But I don't know what image corresponds to what glass typically until after I've printed the image and I have them all laid out, and then I have the glass, and then I'm like, all right, you're going to go with this one. You're going to go with this one, kind of, unless there's one like the young girl in Georgia, I want it to be that size. And a lot of them, if you haven't seen in person, they are smaller in size, just to kind of allow for more intimacy and allow you to have to get close to them, have to take them all in for like what they are. And also I'm thinking what is the word? I'm thinking also just the way of working, how I typically use a light box to expose the glass. I want to get to the sun, but that just seems like, the next step of creating these. I was using the sun, and that's just because the sun is a little bit harder to gauge as far as if it's a hotter day, then they're going to need less time. And I'm kind of like usually working so fast that I'm like, all right, I need something that I know is going to, just come out. And so that's why my next step will be exposing them in the sun. But as of now, I've been using the light box, and it's a 45-minute exposure time, like every time. And typically when I do the 45-minute exposure, it comes out great. And so because I'm using the light box, that also limits my sizing to about, I think I could go almost a little bit bigger than 18 by 24. I think I could get it as big as that, but I wouldn't know how to balance the glass when I put this gelatin on it. It would require another person, I think, to get it to like go on evenly and then to dry it and have it set up. So intimacy, but also it just works out logistically.
Oh, okay. I like this one. I like all the textures in it.
Thank you. Yeah, so this one has a lot of texture, as you just said. And it is, what happens is when I put the glass under the water kind of seeps into like a little bit of the holes that are in the image, and then it like blows the image up. And so what happened with this one is water got into it, started to blow the image up. And before it could like blow up the face, I tilted it downwards. And so the top half of it is just the flattening after the water poured out. And again, she's wearing white and is in nature. So that is the theme that you'll see throughout all of these.
I guess for people who aren't as familiar with cyanotypes, that a lot of times when I see cyanotypes, they're printed on paper or fabric, which would have a completely different effect since they're absorbent materials, and it would be more embedded in the fiber layer than glass, which is non-porous. So I just thought I'd add that.
Yeah.
Well, and also with the texture, I feel like it's bringing back your painting roots. I can sort of see the similarities with this cyanotype in particular because of that top edge with your paintings and that real textured kind of grittiness you get with the paint as opposed to the photography.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I think I really am drawn to the glass ones too. Besides the medicine papers, my cyanotypes on papers just don't work out typically. Even on the medicine papers, they didn't really work out as much, but yeah. There's a slide after this one too. Oh, sorry.
With the way you approach photography, is it similar to how you approach your painting? Or how do you see the materials sort of, I guess, how do you use the materials to get your end goal, I guess?
Okay, so I would say that the way I paint is different than the way I photograph, because like painting, I feel like can come like I could just invent whatever it is, right? Like it does not have to ever have existed. But like with photography, like you need, like something needs to physically be there to take the photo, or you need to even with Photoshop, I think like you still had to physically have something present before you could Photoshop whatever into the image. And so because of that, my paintings are always a lot like, I would paint myself blue sometimes. Like I would paint like a self-portrait of me blue. Or I did a painting and it was titled Black Man with Ears, and he had like gigantic ears that was like the size of his head. And so similar to photography, my paintings are still dealing with Blackness, but in a different way. And so because it didn't need to have like existed, I could just like fathom whatever I wanted it to do or to talk about. And so I did need a little bit more, not sketching, but I would say source material when I would go into like paintings and stuff. But like with photography, I kind of just like, ooh, this would look great. I have this idea. I'll reach out to this person. I'll have them model for me. We'll put it together with this, and we'll use the imagination in a different way to help fathom or create a case scenario that never existed or did exist at some point. All right, this one is Baby Blues. This one's also my favorite. They are twins. And actually their mother was the one before this one. That's their mom. And so I started experimenting with blue glass. And it's the same technique, same process, except just kind of done with blue. And that just kind of speaks more to like the invisibility aspect. And I forgot to touch on this, but like the reason why I'm using glass in the first place is because it makes them almost invisible, but yet not invisible at the same time. And so I'm really interested in this idea of what it's like to be seen and not seen, and who gets to see who, and who says that they can see whomever. So just thinking about this idea of Ralph Ellison's book, The Invisible Man, and how he talks about the disposition that others are in and that they refuse to see him. And so I'm really thinking about that with my own work, and like creating these glass cyanotypes where sometimes if you stand at a different certain angle, the image is almost non-existent. And even though the image is there, you just can't see it, the disposition that you are in. And so that would be the main reason why I use glass. And so the blue glass just kind of helps to iterate that feeling, that moment, and that idea that I'm trying to get across. Yeah.
Can you also you talked about the titles with us a little bit earlier. Can you let us all know how you came to these titles?
Oh, yeah. So some of the titles, I don't think I put it in this presentation for one of them, but I think my name is Blue. Their name is actually Blue. Baby Blues, because I was thinking about Black children and how Black children deserve to grow up and become adults. But like still thinking about that idea of the color baby blue, right? And so you have these babies, these younger kids, toddlers, whatever you want to call them, but they still are, at the same time, babies. They're still young and they still, deserve this chance to grow up and become adults and do whatever they want to do that, their dreams are. And their Blackness shouldn't stop them from that. And so just thinking about blues in general and that idea of like, I got the blues and like, baby, I got the blues, like the poem. That was kind of like where this title stemmed from specifically. And then some of them, I think I asked the artists, the models, what would they title it if they could give a title.
You mentioned the poetry, but on display we have a poem that you wrote with the work. Can you talk about that a little bit and how you tie that in with your photography?
Yes, so I've been using poetry a lot more recently within my work. I used to write a lot of poems when I was like in high school, and then I quit for years. And then suddenly I was just like, I'm feeling a poem. So I wrote a couple and then I wrote more. And then now I'm in a poetry class and it's just spiraled down from there. But this poem, it talks about, I think about the movie Moonlight a lot. And how in the part of the movie, he talks about like, you're blue black, like your skin shines blue in the moonlight. And so that's where you get Chiron's skin in the moonlight. Who Chiron was one of the actors in the movie. And then let's see, Blue Like My Ancestors. And that one I'm really thinking about, which is another tie into the blue glass. And some of the glass I think looks watery almost. And so just thinking about the ancestors, my ancestors who didn't make it across the seas, right? During like the slave trade. And so thinking about the amount of Black people who have gotten lost or died in the ocean. And so that's kind of where the blue glass ties into, and a little bit about like how the poem ties into that. And I'm going off memory for it. Is there... I would say those are like the main aspects, but the baby I got the blues repeats, and I've used that poem kind of to drive or like kind of like direct where my work goes and how I like stay within blue and remembering, okay, like if I was to give myself a mission statement, that poem would be my mission statement, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like with your blue tonalities, if it was in full spectrum, it wouldn't have so much of a timeless quality as much. It might root it in kind of a specific time. And I think there is this really wonderful timeless quality about your works where sometimes it feels like they're older and yet you're taking contemporary photographs. And so I really think that the blue really kind of enhances that quality about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I haven't thought about it as much, but I definitely would agree that it helps to not date them. And I really enjoy that part for sure. For sure.
I think a lot of my questions were answered in your talk. I think. Let's see.
Since we're pre-recording this, our viewers don't get a chance to ask the questions live. Is there a certain camera or technique that you like to use, technology-wise?
I really like Canons, but all of this was shot on a Nikon D810. And a lot of the images are shot up close. And so that is like, I'm very close. Even though I use an 85 millimeter lens, I like closeness. I don't really like too much in the background distracting from like the person. And so I shoot very, very close for a lot of my images. And as you can see, like a lot of these cyanotypes were up close shots.
I think we covered a lot of it.
Yeah, so maybe we could ask more about like future and like other bodies of work, that type of thing.
Yeah. So right now I'm currently, for those that don't know, I go to Georgia State University and I'm getting my master's in photography there. And so it's my second year, so I'm not quite working on my thesis just yet, but I'm creating work in preparation for the thesis or whatever the thesis looks like. I still don't know, you know? But I am really interested in mental health right now and mental health awareness. And so I have been writing on the walls in my studio, and really thinking about Einstein's definition, or said to be Einstein's definition of insanity, and this idea of doing something over and over and over again and expecting a different result, and recognizing how many different aspects in my life where I do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Excuse me. It's kind of like opening the refrigerator and there's no food, and opening it again and expecting there to be, you know, like something else, something more, you know? And so that is really interesting to me because I feel like this insanity within myself, and repetition, and how I do stuff over and over and over again. And that kind of shows up like even within my poems, like the Baby I Got the Blues repeats multiple times. And so right now I am working on putting together almost like a detective's wall of trying to figure out insanity, racism, what it means to be Black identity, and all of those themes that do tie in together to like make me, I would say. And so that's kind of like what I'm working on currently. And I have been learning how to engrave into into the glass with like a laser cutter. And so I've been engraving like words onto the cyanotypes or the glass, and then I hope to cyanotype them after they've been engraved. Yeah.
Sounds cool.
Thank you.
Have you seen Carrie Mae Weems's series? What is it called? It's it's an older work. I'll have to send it to you. It's From Here I Saw What Happened and I Cried.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
And it has the etched text on it with the historic photos in red, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They're very striking.
Yes.
Favorite pieces.
Carrie Mae Weems is one of my tops, like inspos for sure. Carrie Mae Weems and Carrie James Marshall. I like both of them for the painting and then for the photography. Yeah.
So it's still a little early because you have another year left of school, but do you have any plans for post-graduation or what you want to do in the future?
So I am thinking, right now I'm teaching intro to photography, and I'm trying to fill it out. I'm trying to see if I could see myself teaching for like a while, you know, at the college level is something I would like want to do. But other than that, I just want to make art. Yeah, I would say like if I could dream and not fail, it would be just to make art, just to be like an artist and continue doing things like this and talking to people and sharing my work with people. Yeah.
Well, you're doing great. So just keep it in.
Thank you.
Well, unless you have any further questions, anything else you'd like to add, Asia? Or
I can't think of anything. I think I touched on almost, I think all of it. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Asia, for being our guest today. And we really look forward to seeing the progress and the changes in your artwork in the future. And for our viewers out there, I hope you come to the Print and Drawing Study Center to see the Asia's work in person. And it's up through March 25th.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me so much.